Welcome back to another episode of Who's to Say. I'm your host, Tom Foolery, and this is a particularly special episode. It is a presentation of sorts, and I'm happy to say that I do have a loose collaboration with the folks at the end of COVID, the way forward, people I'm connected to through the best aspects of social media and the interweb. Special thanks to Jacob Diaz, who will be coming on the podcast later this month in December. That's already lined up. And he is the undercover virologist on Instagram. We've mentioned him before. And this seemed like an apropos description of what a lot of people will likely have some level of experience with this season, this winter season, is when symptoms start to pop up that we reject or find uncomfortable, and there's certainly merit to that. Then how do we deal with it? Are we able to surrender in a way to the wisdom and brilliance of our bodies? Or do we fight? Do we suppress? Do we seek to stymie a lot of the symptoms? And I've spoken about before that the symptoms are the wisdom, the symptoms are the solution. And we only develop real blockages and certainly chronic expressions of disease when we seek to suppress and repress, and whether that's emotions. I mean, the bloodletting, so to speak, of emotions. I mean, the release of our feelings is absolutely cathartic, and we do often have the expectation, self-imposed largely, that our feelings are only meant to be internally experienced, and therefore don't have a place in our external expression. Of course, people in healthy relationships and uh, really deep, high quality friendships know that's not the truth. That you certainly feel better when you just express yourself. And it's not, I can speak from my own experience for sure, having to grapple with the idea that whatever my emotional burden is, why would I saddle somebody with that as well? And it's really not like that. It's, I think that adage is a burden shared is one easier to carry. And and yet the energetics of our non-physical experience are such that an emotion is not a physical thing. So I mean, yes, we know the weight that they can create for ourselves. However, it's very rare, I think, that when we share whatever we're going through with other people, that they really do take on half the weight or all of the weight of that experience. So it's really just about being able to articulate and let people know that, yeah, hey, I'm going through some shit, and uh, just wanted to put that intention out there that I'm dealing with it in the best way that I can, and it means the world to have your support. And that's one of the interesting things about this time of year, to bring this full circle. I will sprinkle in one, certainly intention for myself, that as much as I think when I wax poetic about various ideas and how they connect in my mind, and it is a wide web, I realize that that is really things going out, especially into the airwaves and how it's all landed with you all. And what a podcast can be, or may be at its best, is a container. And I'm grateful to the people in my life who have called attention to that for me, that what I am trying to accomplish, such as it is, whatever my ambitions are with this, especially from the perspective of edification and education, like this is going to be today, it is best received when it is contained, when it is on an inward track. So that's something I want to hold myself accountable to today and going forward. Is until maybe I have some other foils with guests, and we can I can see if my web of meaning, such as it is, aligns with theirs. Uh, where we're pulling in all these different points of connection and relationship. That's always a fun exercise to go through. However, when there is a topic to be discussed, I want to honor that with as much specificity and exclusivity, excluding everything else, to stay on track. And that's the thing about destinations, is whatever the journey is, there is a track, whether we're carving it through the overgrowth, or it's just a railroad track that we're following from A to B. So there will be, as I see it, lots of that today. That was my disclaimer. But one thing I wanted to bring in for this discussion around symptoms, and especially what we get for what is considered cold and flu season, or just seasonal depression, whatever you want to call it. There is something that I am learning more about, thanks to the work of the great mystic Rudolf Steiner, whom I've mentioned before, and certainly on recent podcasts, his work seems to pop up in many aspects of what I continue to comprehend about health, especially holistic health, and how that ties into the sky clock, that being the astrology and the seasons we're in, the seasons of our lives, as well as the seasons of the year for sure. And there is a unique experience of this time of the year where we go from the highs of summer and the abundance of energy that's available with the sun, with the heat, with the uh, massive growth of life. Well, and if not the growth, that's certainly that can be more characteristic of springtime. But it's just so obvious to us in the summer. Everything's lush and green and colorful, and we can't help but tune into that life. As that starts to wane in the autumn, and as we rapidly approach winter, and here in the higher latitudes, we can certainly we're feeling that in our in our bones for sure. It's getting quite chilly, and you can't help but notice the difference, especially with when you go out on the rise and the frost is there. And thankfully the birds are still active, which is great. And to hear their song right around sunset, just a great reminder for the clocks that we should be uh, living our lives by more often as best we can. And I think there's certainly a lot to be said for that, which I certainly will at other times. That those clocks are also why I am wearing my blue blocking glasses, because I'm trying to mitigate some of the impacts of staring at a computer screen for the next hour, however long we're on here, and it does help a lot. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to be said of that I'll be referencing on other podcasts. However, before we launch in here, what I'm talking about from the emotion, the energy, emotion, and the blockages that come when we have stagnant emotional expression, when we're not able to find the release for that, and our Western world, especially here in the States, is unfortunately well known, for better or worse, for our ability to deny a lot of that. Well, the Brits too. The people, I think I mentioned this before. The some of the anatomical research that's been done on cadavers, and especially looking at the heart, is that some of the most damaged hearts, or the weakest hearts that have been seen in the lab and after the fact, are those of the Brits and those in the UK, which is an historically stoic people. Uh, I mean, yeah, there's just and if there's any UK folks out there listening, you can corroborate that for me, I believe. But I think there's a lot of validity to that. And so is it any surprise that since they inhabit the northern latitudes, the higher latitudes, that they would go through such an experience? I wonder. For the rest of us, though, I think part and parcel to the physical expression of symptoms as well is that, as I'm learning from Steiner, the the cyclical nature of, yes, you go from the summer, so much joy, so much happiness, so much celebration is had because of that. It is a Luciferic energy. Lucifer being the light bringer, of course, that's certainly characteristic of the summertime. And then you do get this sort of crash, this sort of depression, so to speak. Not just on as we think of it as clinical depression. It's just that you go from the high to a depression. If you think of a line graph, uh, you just get that depression of a lower vibration, and that's how it goes. The sun is at a lower angle. We are not able to source sufficient energy from the heat, and we do sort of go more inside and within ourselves, and that's all very common to the experience of the winter. And there's nothing unnatural about that. Those are all natural cycles. And no but, and how that presents on a physical level is that we can get some blockages that our body then knows needs to come out through. I recently talked about injury. trying to have a comparable level of activity in the summertime when I was trending toward winter, less than ideal. I'd be, as it occurs to me, I'd be curious to see what the occurrence of injuries are for winter sports versus summer sports. Tennis is a year-round sport, so hard to say. Although it doesn't take place too much in the winter, that's something that comes to mind for sure. But football sort of an exception because it's just such a fucking car crash every Sunday, as it's said. But I don't want to deliberate too much on this. It's something I'm working out for myself, so to speak, about the psychic roots of disease, the emotional roots of disease that then show up as drainage and detox symptoms where we need to clear things, or it's a chill, it's a fever. I mean, it's these things that we commonly associate with contagion, and contagion is a theory, and it is a largely disproven theory. And anyone who wants to check me on that, you can do so. However, that's why I want to lean into Jacob's work when he comes on. We're going to explore a lot of that, and also his work. I mean, he's done some great posts recently at Undercover Virologist on Instagram. I don't know where else he is, but he certainly puts out a lot of great content there to explain, to the best of our ability, these phenomena, why we present mucus and fever and vomit and diarrhea and whatever those things customary to what we think of as a contagious flu that we then need to get shots and protect against, and then take fucking Tamiflu and all of these things that suppress. And as I said at the beginning, I'm not denying the reality of those experiences, and I'm not denying that they're uncomfortable. And when I've been there, I mean, in 2020 was the last time I had anything like that. End of 21, I think, Christmas time 21. Yeah, because I think that's right. Because I was supposed to go to an event, supposed to go to a Celtics game, and they were requiring shots. So yeah, that could have been end of 21. But that was my last experience with anything flu-like. And even then, I didn't think that I had caught COVID from anyone, and not that I was denying the existence of it, as I emphatically do now. It was more just that I'm like, okay, I feel like this is just something I need, for whatever's swirling out there and whatever experiences people are having that look like this thing they're calling COVID-19, even though, as I've reminded you all before, there is not one singular unique symptom to COVID-19. So you can just call it whatever you want. I mean, it's nothing viral, it's nothing contagious. It was something. It is a psyop. It is a psychological operation in its truest form, to just put a moniker, to put a name stamp on something, and then create certainly the show that the drama that unfolded on either side of all of that. So that's revisionist history that is always worth revisiting to learn the lessons for. But that was my first opportunity to lean into the lessons of the pain teacher on that front. I have a much healthier perspective on injury and why those things happen. I just wanted to say a last word for my own resistance. Like, fuck, this is really uncomfortable. My one night of, feeling myself heat up and then it turning into chills and all that. And, you do wish that would go away. You wish it would pass. And yet, anytime something like that has come up since, in far lesser degrees, uh, then you just let it ride. And something like tissue salts, which I've spoken about before, and Lisa Surback, who authored the great book that I mentioned which is the homeopathic guide, the real reference guide for how to plug and play with tissue salts. She's agreed to come on the podcast as well, probably either later this month or in January. So we're lining them up and knocking them down, people, with guests that are really going to pack a punch for you. So that's I'm trying to keep you on the hook for that, because this is where the real educational content starts to roll and the gravy starts to flow in high serving doses. So be around for that. So something like a tissue salt, just it it concentrates where the energy is already going to that detox. So it's not, if you have a sore throat or a stuffy nose and that stuff is starting to run a little bit, or you start to hack, uh, there is an expedition process that the tissue salts are going to aid. And tissue salts are very much aligned with the brilliance of the body. Number one, they are tied into our astrobiological clock. So for every there are 12 most common tissue salts. I know there are more out there if you just look it up, but what's most commonly used are the 12, especially because of their association to certain organic compounds as well as astrological signs. So there's that component as well. And then they are suited to um, certain parts of the body and therefore certain expressions of symptoms. And so this is absolutely aligned with what we're about to dive into now, which is the seminal question of the terrain philosophy, which is, what if my body is brilliant? And without further ado, I'll share this. This is from the PDF, which I keep in my link tree, my link in my bio on my Instagram, at Landshark Clemenzo, Who's to Say podcast, Home Court Health, wherever you go for my stuff. That's this is included in there, so you can download this yourself and reference it. Especially if any of these questions really start to sit with you and lodge themselves in your consciousness in a certain way that you really need to, if you have a trigger around it, if you have any resistance, or if you have a really compelling yes, I see the point here, and now how do I bring that into a healing perspective for my life? I'm also going to provide access to the video rendition of this that's already been produced. This is more for the benefit of bringing it to you all, and maybe I can clip some of it to circulate on my Instagram and therefore share with you all over and over again. But I think it's a maybe 7 minute or 10 minutes, something like that, Instagram post that they all put out. And my approach today will be to go through this series of questions that are deeply thought provoking. And if anything really, I mean, I'm doing this live first take impromptu like I usually do. And if anything really strikes me, we'll explore it together. And I'll try not to be too tangential about it, just to keep us on track. Like we said, we do have a set course and a set destination here. So I will intend to honor that. Opening question to really set the tone for us. Series of questions. What if my body is brilliant and everything it does is part of a strategy to survive and thrive? What if every incomprehensibly intricate process my body attempts is simply its best path forward, given whatever resources and roadblocks are present at the moment? And my first reflection here, just that last part, whatever resources and roadblocks are present at the moment. So, making the most of whatever our mineral composition is, our nutrient profile is, and then whatever the roadblocks are. Usually, the way our body operates is for ease of movement. I mean, our thoughts are certainly like that. That's why it's really hard to change habits, because that requires sometimes a longer learning curve, but it is a learning curve nonetheless. And so, whatever is most deeply grooved, we are going to lean back into that. And so, sometimes our body is just going to go after, at least anytime symptoms present, especially if they're recurrent. What is the shallowest? What is the smallest hurdle that the body can clear right there? And so it's not always going to tackle the biggest, whatever your most significant experience of trauma is, or your severe acute experience with anything. It's not always going to rip that stuck band-aid off first. So it's whatever we have available at the moment. Given that billions of my cells purposefully die each day to brilliantly allow for constant growth and adaptation, and physical injuries, stress, and exposure to toxins result in additional cellular death, where does all this waste go if I'm not removing it as quickly as I'm producing it? This is the encouragement and the philosophy around semi-regular detoxes, and then on a daily basis, sweating, movement, lymph expression, anything like that. That being able to have high quality bowel movements and regular pee schedule, so to speak. That is, our regular detox. But yeah, I mean, this is a great place to start. Is just with all of that cell death, and then to say nothing of the processes of our digestion, assimilation, and defecation and processing like that. Where does it all go if I'm not, especially if I'm someone who is struggling to remove it as quickly as I'm producing it? What happens inside my body when it holds too much waste for longer than it should? Does this stagnant swamp of waste damage neighboring healthy tissue, producing a snowball effect of more and more cellular death as waste continues to pile up? What strategies might my body use to get out of this vicious cycle? So let me, I want to revisit that again. Um, does this stagnant swamp of waste damage neighboring healthy tissue? With that buildup, if that dam is totally built up, and I mean, you can think of what a swamp is. I mean, yeah, that's a natural thing. What we're talking about is if things aren't able to move, if there's stagnation, if there's cellular death, if there's buildup of toxic materials, and that is coming up against whatever our healthy tissues are, uh, can that is there spillover? Is there pile up that then we can't really manage? And so, what strategies might our incredibly, and I only say incredible when it's likely out of our conscious comprehension. There are very few things that are truly unbelievable, and there are absolutely things that are magical and mystical as well. What I'm talking about is it is really hard to fathom if there are indeed the billions of cells that we're talking about dying on an hourly, on a 24-hour basis. uh, then it is incredible that our body can handle that. And I'll just say a word here briefly for the fact that without our as many of us are fucking control freaks and left brain dominant and are hyper vigilant with as many things in our environment as we can control, and god forbid things are out of our control, especially our ability to predict the future, then we really fall into these stress cycles. For all of that that goes on within us, your your breath, the circulation of your blood, the pumping of your heart, the function of your brain, I mean, yes, there are conscious movements around, uh, there is some conscious effort around things that you're doing to move. However, reflexes, central nervous system, all that stuff, way beyond your conscious control for the most part, until you get into meditation and you really slow down and you become aware of your breath. But you're not going to you're not going to stop your brain, just like you're not going to stop water from being wet. You're not going to stop your breath unless you want to die or go through something. Still, even holding your breath, there is still that polarity. Is that an inhale or an exhale, whatever you need, is going to be required at some moments. You can only hold that for so long. You can only deny nature for so long, before your body and its brilliance is required to assume control once again. And the images for this are great. I want to share. I mean, like I said, I will share this, but the video component as well is just fun to see what the images that are curated for, to be complemented to the series of questions that I'm sharing here. What if my body only recognizes natural substances and gets confused by highly synthetic or highly processed things commonly consumed and absorbed, such as artificial flavors and colors, vegetable and seed oils, and microplastics, etc.? How does my body deal with these substances when they too are part of the swamp? Say a quick word here for clothing. I'm wearing this beautiful sweater that the love of my life made me, and I feel amazing every time I wear it, not least of all because she infused it with her time and energy and love. It's also made out of completely natural materials. So is the shirt I'm wearing underneath, so are the shorts I'm wearing. So um, there's a lot of great underwear products. I mean, those are the things that are closest to some of your most vulnerable and highly receptive parts, your genitalia. So I would certainly encourage people to, if nothing else, start with uh, cotton, wool, hemp, even underwear products, and then from there doing your best to find natural clothing, especially for the workout stuff, guys. When you're sweating and your pores are open, and there's been great research around this. It's pretty fucked up, when I realized this for myself, that for as much as I enjoyed and still enjoy to some degree wearing Lululemon products, because gosh, they sure do look cool, guys. I'm not going to deny that there is a swagger component there. However, there's not a single natural thing involved there. And so if you're someone who enjoys sweating while you work out, uh, I think we all have for a time, and this is where we elevate ourselves the more we learn. And it's not about fear, and it's not about regret or anything like that. And why didn't I know better? When you know better, you do better. That's the name of the game. Um, for workout clothes specifically, because you're so vulnerable in that sweating state. Um, the friction, the heat, and then your pores being open, you then absorb the microplastics that are, I mean, it's almost 100% of what an aloe or a Lululemon or a even Viore. I know there's a big, I know people love their Viore stuff, but I don't think they really have anything that special. It's just another version of Lululemon and stuff like that. So the decisions we make, I mean, you sweat more when you're wearing cotton and hemp and wool and natural stuff like that. And I mean, I think for cost, they're right on par with any of the luxury brands. So if not a little cheaper, and fine, you don't have a cool workout fit, but I promise from my own experience, you feel better when I play tennis, and it's just in my cotton shorts and t-shirts. Feel like I can go all day, and it's a weird thing. I mean, because all the top athletes are playing at the highest top flight level in microplastics now. I mean, back in the good old days, especially tennis, you see them in the super heavy cotton polos and the short shorts and all. I mean, we got to bring the short shorts back anyway. It's just better for blood flow and for swagger anyway. So they're making it happen, and they can always level up. And the guys that do, I mean, uniform's a uniform, and sponsorships are what they are. Uh, I think the landscape for recovery and top flight athletic performance is, how do you balance? How do you counteract the things that you're subjected to on a daily basis? Same for all of us in our fields of performance, whether it's life performance, job performance, sexual performance, parenting performance, athletic performance. If you're still uh, running that game like I am, then it does become an imperative initiative for you to say, here's what I'm subjecting myself to that is breaking me down to some degree, that is some level of degradation or degeneration, and then how do I support regeneration, which is, we're begging the questions that are going to highlight that for us. Given that bacteria in my gut are critically important in the process of breaking down the dead cells of food that I consume, and bacteria have been discovered throughout all parts of the healthy human body, might bacteria also be helpful in breaking down my own dead cell waste as well? I could really let fly on this. Suffice it to say, just because I like to spice up a little bit of editorial each component we're covering here. Uh, antibacterial stuff, antimicrobial. We don't need that shit. The fucking, again, this is for a wintertime release. You don't need the what's that stuff even called? Because I haven't used it in years. Hand wash, I guess. Whatever it is, the gel that they have at the gas stations, and now every place you go is yeah, because I mean, it says right on there, it kills 99% of bacteria, viruses, uh, microbes, all that stuff, which they don't. I mean, that's total folly. Like the Clorox wipes that are, I remember seeing those in the grocery store that say, kills 99.9% of COVID-19 virus. And I'm thinking, well, you can't kill 99% of something that's not real. And also, you just made that shit up as a marketing ploy, which they can do. I mean, if it's Johnson and Johnson or whomever, they have carte blanche. Make no mistake to lie to you and put it on a label. And there's almost no repercussion for that. There's almost no retribution when those things are disproven. Just like every single drug that has killed somebody was at once deemed to be safe and effective. So just bear all that in mind. But yeah, the war against bacteria is sorely misguided because, again, I mean, we have proof that bacteria are a part of us. We are these things. It's another form of life. To deny life is to invite death. So, perfect follow up, of course, thanks to the folks at the end of COVID. What if the concept of good bacteria and bad bacteria, good and bad in air quotes, what if the concept of good bacteria and bad bacteria is fundamentally wrong? What if all bacteria are simply organisms designed to do one job, eat dead tissue, breaking it into smaller parts which can more readily be eliminated and returned to the earth as part of the circle of life? And this is one of the core tenets of the terrain philosophy, the terrain paradigm, that there is, it is mostly neutral. You may have buildup of bacteria that are just creating blockages doesn't mean we need to totally drain all of the bacteria in our body. It's similar with parasites. I think that's going to be brought up here as well. But there's a role for everything, whether we deny it or not. Was reminded the other day by Paul Chek is that for all the fear around mosquitoes, mosquito larvae in a body of water are there to consume some of the dead waste that shows up in food with animal death or feces or anything like that, things that build up in the water. Again, it's all serving a purpose. Even if we think that they're ugly and undesirable, there's a role there that if we would just get out of the way, a lot of will be accomplished without our control and conscious effort. Given that bacteria produce their own wastes in the process of metabolizing dead cells, what if bacteria are only problematic for my body when they produce too much waste as a result of being given a buffet of dead substances to consume? So, I'm actually going to take exception to the otherwise great image that is produced here, which is several huge pizzas. Which I mean, look like somewhere in Palermo, where my people are from. So I'm gonna resist the subliminal messaging here a little bit. However, the the punchline here about uh, what if bacteria are only problematic for my body when they produce too much waste because they're overloaded and they just have to cycle out because they're not giving something that is alive and nourishing to deal with and to process as bacteria can and do. What happens when they're given a buffet of dead things to consume? And that is so much of what we're all confronted with is bioavailability. Do we have an overwhelming majority, if not a completely whole foods diet? uh I mean, even if it's a carrot that was fucking factory farm and sprayed, like, you're better having that than the carrot puree that has more substances in it that are dead than a carrot. I mean, yeah, so this is a good reminder for people. If you look at an ingredients label, uh, first of all, as a caveat emptor, as a buyer beware, I think it's up to there's a couple legs to this just for ingredients labels. So number one, there are things that are not included on ingredients labels for any processed food, really any food that is packaged and has an ingredients label, that are, quote, generally regarded as good or generally regarded as safe, which is an FDA and a USDA uh, description, label. Total red tape, total just bureaucratism, scientism, corporatism. So these are things that they don't have to include on labels, and they mostly are chemicals or pesticides and treatments like that, that in whatever skewed systems they're used, uh, they don't have to disclose that to you, the consumer. So again, we are in the world of where we are usually on the back foot, and that's why the age of the interweb can be wielded in our favor to just do better homework. Again, if you just go get the apple that fell off the tree at your local orchard, you don't have to do a lot of homework there. And even if they sprayed it because they have to, because they don't know any better and they're only doing their best, so what? It's still infused with the energetics of your local environment. I've got my golden delicious apple here. It's a little on the small side because it's out of season. However, quick plug for golden delicious for those of you like me who don't enjoy red delicious apples. This is not akin of the red delicious. Just superb. It's sweet. Still on the sweeter side, like a red apple would be. It's not like a Granny Smith or anything like that. Although I do enjoy my green apples as well. So just a little flavor of life. So, but for ingredients labels, if you whatever the first ingredient listed is, this is not to say anything about the macronutrients and what just an absolute clusterfuck gong show it is on the macronutrients description. You can almost throw all of that out, except for maybe the sugar. When you just see 25 grams of sugar, you just say, all right, I'm not fucking with that at all. Uh, but it's just I've spoken about this before. It almost doesn't matter what is chemically described as a macronutrient profile. What's the fat content? What's the protein content? What's the carbohydrate content? Because uh, We don't know how they measured that. And then how does it get into your body? How's it retained in your body? If you are someone tracking macros, you got to do. I mean, that's why I send everyone to the biooptimizers, because they do have systems and supplements to augment the body's ability through something like a masszymes, using enzymes to enhance what we retain from our food. But also, again, stay on track. In the ingredients label, whatever's listed for food ingredients or chemical ingredients, whatever, it's listed in descending order. So whatever ingredient is listed first is what is the most used by volume. So using that poor example of, you can get pureed carrots in a jar, and if carrots are not the first ingredient there, you better run, because it's just likely more dead stuff or things that don't belong there. Just to round out the point made by this particular slide about when our bacteria are given dead substances, that requires that we deplete our life force to try to alchemize the dead thing that we are consuming and extract. I mean, you can't. That's just to sustain us. I mean, you cannot extract energy out of something that is dead. And if it's made in the lab, this is one of my biggest issues with lab made food, is that you cannot infuse real energy into something. I mean, yeah, you might have the yeasts and the bacterias and the things that are that do have life within them. However, uh, like having ground beef, or having a plant that's been picked off of its stalk, severed from its stalk, or picked off the tree, it still had a life. It is still alive in its own way. What I'm talking about with dead things are the processed things, the things that are totally made up, that don't exist in nature. And therefore, when we eat them, then we are depleting our life force energy, our chi, our prana, in order to sustain us. Because otherwise, if you bring in dead things, it's just going to kill things in you. So we definitely ask too much of our natural roster of bacteria when we feed it dead stuff. Mm. Good pause for water break. Water, very much alive. What if bacteria and other microbes are the convenient scapegoat for the true underlying problem? Excessive cell death as caused by a variety of factors. Metaphorically, what if bacteria don't cause the fire, but instead proliferate as nature's attempt to put out the fire? And I think that's a question worth meditating on for sure. Is that this is the runaround and the deception and the total just yeah, it's inversion of allopathic medicine. I mean, one of the best ways it's been described to me is that what I practice is holistic health, which looks at the whole. That is the most simple description of holistic health. And then we see how whatever the parts are, if it's your knee giving you trouble, if it's your lungs giving you trouble, if it's your thyroid, how how are those interrelated? Of course, they all are absolutely, indelibly, and undeniably interconnected. However, you know, these parts of the body have, your knee has more of a direct relationship to your hip and your ankle than it does to your shoulder. Although, I mean, your left shoulder does wrap around across your body in the transverse abdominal plane, or transverse abdominis, in your midsection does wrap over to your right leg. So, I mean, these are the great dynamics that light me up. However, what I'm pointing to is that allopathic Western medicine is about the parts only. I mean, sure, they exist in the body, but also the allopathic philosophy, school of teaching, of course, is hook, line, and sinker in league with the germ theory of disease. And one of the great examples that was given to me recently as well is, if you had a bunch of fish in a fish tank, and they're all belly up, and or you see that they're struggling or they won't eat or anything, and you see that the fish tank is totally dirty, would you clean the fish tank, or would you vaccinate the fish and give them a bunch of drugs and a bunch of anti-inflammatories and a bunch of IVs or whatever? Point being is that you clean up the terrain, you clean up the environment. I mean, the great idea that fish don't know, the water is wet. That old David Foster Wallace speech, which is a great reread if you haven't visited that in a while. With the fish, so the older fish swimming past the two fish, and the older fish says, "Hey, fellas, how's the water?" And they look at each other, "What the fuck is water?" Most people don't appreciate their terrain. And it is all of both the material and immaterial, the physical and non-physical aspects of our reality that absolutely our thoughts and feelings impact our digestion, our energy, the alignment of our spine. We talked about burden earlier. If you feel burdened by your trauma, your stress, your obligations, that can absolutely result in issues with your T spine and therefore your neck, and therefore you can't think properly because you have migraines or you've got TMJ and you don't want to eat certain foods. I mean, the dominoes can just fucking fall before you even realize that you were the one that knocked the first domino over. And I mean, how do we reset that? It is the great honor of someone like myself, a holistic health practitioner, a homeopath, among others, that I'm going to be connecting you all with to return to a real homeostasis, to a simpler way of living. And a lot of this is, yeah, just getting out of our way. But our body is going to do whatever it has to. And I talked about this before with the philosophy of German new medicine, that whether it's bacteria or fascia or our spinal column, at some point there will be a crisis. And that is usually something that, yes, it does lay us low. And it also can be a major guidepost to say, hey, you got to look over there, on the mental, emotional front, as well as the physical front. And the bacteria play and other microbes play a huge role in this as well. What strategies might my body use to remove the combination of dead cell debris, microbial waste, and synthetic substances if I'm burdened with too many of them all at once? What if I'm not adequately hydrating and my bowel movements are infrequent? What if I'm not exercising enough to sweat out wastes? What are the next steps my body, my brilliant body, might take to clean the swamp? Uh, this time of year, as I spoke about sort of on the energetic front that Steiner talks about, is when we go into that depression and things get sort of retained, the blockages come up. Also, what people blame, understandably so, what we might not blame the holidays for, but things, the indulgences of the holidays. Too much food sometimes is bad. The I've seen some great posts about this around, the post Halloween flu. Well, yeah, I mean, all the fucking candy and sugary stuff. What do you expect? So it's the same through the holiday meals, and yeah, you're not sweating as much, or you're not processing as much. And yeah, when you inject a lot of alcohol and sugar into the equation, then you totally get uh, blockages and inconstancies for bowel movements and things that we depend on to process the dead waste. And so our body has to resort to some things, sometimes like a diarrhea, to just say, like, fucking absolute bile dump. Bile is another, totally another beast to talk about in this detox and in this homeostasis discussion. But there's a lot of bile just in a dump of diarrhea, that you are just getting a total stress reset and a flush that looks like, yeah, it's vomit or it's sweat, but mostly diarrhea are the things that we're mostly familiar with. What if I love when I set myself up like this. I really do. What if diarrhea and vomiting are strategies my body uses to remove wastes? What if excessive phlegm and a runny nose is another? What if the symptoms we commonly refer to as being sick are actually just the necessary steps of healing? And spoiler alert, it's a it's an obvious yes. These things start to make sense once you really sit with it. But just waste removal systems, drainage, detox. I sort of get away from saying, really, it's just draining, and or just going through a refresh, a reset, a rebuild. Um, when things like phlegm and a runny nose come up, just let it flow. What if taking all right, now we really get to the gravy here. What if taking medications designed to end the symptoms of, quote, sickness actually prevents my body from healing? What if antibiotics, anti-life, it's what the name is. We got to pay attention to the words here, people. If we deny what the words are telling us, and what, the what's a better way of describing, just not authorities, not powers that should not be, anyone we give our power away to, and look to. Call them experts, doctors, teachers, politicians, news anchors, parents, whatever. Uh, Whoever we're looking to guide us instead of being self-guided, they will still give you the words that tell you what they're about. And antibiotics means anti-life, and we're gonna it's followed up here. So let me take it from the top. What if taking medications designed to end the symptoms of sickness actually prevents my body from healing? What if antibiotics kill my bacteria, which stops them from breaking down unwanted substances, which in turn terminates my natural cleansing process? If my body is unable to remove excess waste via these, albeit unpleasant symptoms, does it have no choice but to store them deeper? And I would say yes. And this philosophy suggests yes, is that since your body did not get to express itself, just like emotions, since when I was a child or even now, if I am inhibited from expressing myself fully, the body has to store it somewhere deep and just say, okay, you know best, Tom. Or you sure think you know best. There's a lot of unconditional love that goes into you know, the body is a gift from God. Absolutely, it's a gift from the Creator, and God is unconditional love. It will always say yes, whatever you want. Yes, we'll do whatever you want. Doesn't mean it's completely devoid of consequence and learning the lessons. That's usually where the pain comes from. Is when we deny all of that. Uh, so there absolutely is the very real, true experience of the deeper, the body keeps the score. All of those things are, all of those tenets are true. uh, do we then have the tools or the resources or the coaches and guides and mentors to go deep enough to start to bring some of that stuff back up? And are we brave enough to go really fucking deep and dig that stuff back up again and have to really deal with it before it turns into cancer, before it turns into Crohn's disease, before it turns into autoimmune, air quotes for any of you listening? I mean, thankfully, the people who produce this content, and are champions for the real, new biology, the really healing model of health, they know that there's no such thing as an autoimmune disease. Your body would never betray itself. I think if anything is clear to you from these last several slides, is that this wisdom is not seeking to harm you. It's just trying to call your attention, your awareness to what's going on inside of you, and then you become the alchemist. You become the Sherlock Holmes. You become the great healer for yourself by getting curious and honoring whatever it is that your body is trying to reveal to you. So if symptoms aren't the problem, but instead are the solution to something which previously occurred, what if all of modern medicine's efforts are misguided? What if the dramatic increase in chronic ailments over the last century is at least partially due to advancements in suppressing short term symptoms? If my body is perpetually pushing waste deeper, am I simply trading acute diseases for chronic ones, creating more severe outcomes as I kick the proverbial can further down the road? Almost any system that you can think of that we engage with in the modern world is kicking the can down the world. Environmental, financial, educational, governmental, relational, nutritional, uh, I mean, that's what it's all about. Is it's going to be someone else's problem, and it didn't always used to be like this. I was talking about this around the holiday time of sort of when did this change, and how might we reverse this? Where did we go wrong? But there certainly is a prevailing Wetiko mind virus, um, unconscious mental perspective on the world that says we're going to make it some. I mean, you boomers out there, it's sad but true. This is the world that you all have created, and it's not a victim thing. This is not about blame. This is just we're calling out the root causes of disease. And part of this disease did start with the boomers in the time of plenty. Is we're gonna reap more than we sow. We're going to take more than we give, and whatever problems come up from either scarcity or pollution or the printing of worthless fiat currency or the total decimation of high quality values in classical education, whatever those issues are, it's going to be someone else's problem and we'll be long dead. Even though this is the wild paradox of a lot of the boomers, is the trying to live forever, the plastic surgery, the biohacking, the denial, and so much of that is the denial of the life cycle, where I mean their deaths are going to be some of the death throes will be some of the ugliest for them. A lot of them have given way to atheism, or they don't have real spiritual experience through what I'm in New England. I'm surrounded by plenty of boomer Catholics, and I mean this isn't even judgment in a way that that Christians wouldn't think is a good thing, but they don't have spiritually rich lives. I mean, that's not what modern religion is anyway. It's totally devoid of spiritual experience. It's something else. It's authority based. It's so and that's not too much of a tangent, I don't think. This is I'm just highlighting what's mentioned here is the kicking the can down the road. That is so much of what we have, even on the scale of when I have a tickle in my throat, I'm gonna go take whatever's at the drugstore to help me feel better. And I mean that is unfortunately the Ahrimanic uh, pervasive mentality that we have is I just want to feel better. So whether that's numbing from my problems or just getting, well, it's the balance. I mean, this is what Steiner talks about as well. So the Christ is the middle way, the Tao. There's so many descriptions for it throughout the mystical, throughout the words of mystics and scriptures throughout time. But the sliding scale, the two extremes of our experience, especially in the world, is the Ahrimanic is the material. It is the things that are pure, and this is so much of what we have in the modern medical system for sure, is that we're just particles and atoms, and we came from the Big Bang theory. There's no conscious design. Hackable animals, as the people from the World Economic Forum, who are in every corner of government and an institution in the world, believe that your consciousness can be hacked because you're just this body, this meat suit. So that's Ahriman as it presents in the world. And then the Luciferic is we're all gods and we're all light beings and aliens, and we don't come from here. We come from outer space and stardust. And I totally reject that stuff too. It just never landed with me at all. Um, but this is what we get is so on the Ahrimanic front is like you're only treating the body and parts like we talked about. So you're not going to get to the real root causes of disease if you only maintain that approach. So now we continue. We've had some of the good gravy. Now we're getting into the meat. I'm going to start to fly a little bit here because I'm sure you're all having similar reflections that I am, and just want to let these questions and queries land as they should. Just let them pack a punch, and you can revisit this on your own, as I said, when you go to the show notes for every episode, where I always have resources for you to, as it always says, further resources to enhance this episode. If there's things that you miss or things that really grabbed your attention and your energy, then you can follow it through what I will link to. What if the concept of specific diseases is wrong? What if the root cause of all disease is the same, but the symptoms are different depending on an impossibly nuanced history of the individual? Does this explain how positive results have been observed when treating many types of supposedly distinct diseases with simple water fasting protocols? So now this is that's a very specific reference, but it's a poignant one because as mentioned here, the roots are the same. And something like a fasting protocol is when you remove all else, all the other inputs, and it's just the healing essence of water there to nourish you. What will your body seek to resolve? What will it discard? What will it regenerate? It's a worthwhile question. What if the cure for every disease is simply to remove excess wastes and any other impediments, allowing our brilliant bodies to heal naturally? What if that takes drastically longer for some people than others, depending on their unique history and lifestyle habits? With so many variables, How could this idea ever be proven or disproven via clinical trials? It's so true. One of the great limitations of a clinical trial is, are you going to do it from womb to tomb, from birth to earth? Are you is it going to be from, I mean, just think about how dynamic the evolution is for a person from adolescence to early adulthood and then every day thereafter. So this is more what I ascribe to, and it is in reference to that last side as well. It is almost impossible for an outsider, for a third party to imagine the nuance and the intricacies of every choice, every thought you've entertained, every experience, every memory you think you have. Uh, I'm with a client, with someone I'm working with. I'm never going to get to all of that. However, my role as a guide is to point you that way. Have you thought about this? Have you gone here yet within your heart, within your soul, and then within your body and these specific organs where that manifests? Have you gone there yet? Uh, but this is certainly where we get into the timeline of disease. Uh, Actually, in homeopathy, there is somewhat of a guiding principle that for however long you've been aware of the symptoms of whatever disease or pain or whatever your experience is. Let's say you've been dealing something with something for 6 months. It could take 6 months at least for you to reverse that. If you think about that, I mean, that's just polarity. That's just balance for you. So to say how long is it going to take, Doc? I mean, granted, it's such a fucking insane death sentence in a way to crush someone's spirit, to say you'll be on this medication for the rest of your life if you want to live. I think this is one of my final interjections on the drug front. If you took a healthy person and gave them, let's say conservatively, even though I think the average American is on, it's either 6 or 8 prescription medication. Let's take the lower end of that and let's call it 5. If you take a healthy person and put them on 5 medications to take every day or every week, you are going to supremely fuck them up. If you take a sick person and give them 5 plus medications to take, and I know people who are subjected to that, or I should say, who have opted into that, who have chosen that, who have given away their consent to do that to themselves every day, thinking that that's the way to health. That's a death sentence as well. No sick person is going to get better. You might numb, you might stymie, you might again suppress symptoms and deeper into someone's tissue, into someone's organs. You won't heal them that way. What if my mind is the most powerful part of my body and yet another variable? As frequently demonstrated by placebo controlled studies, thoughts are capable of producing physiological effects. What happens to my body if I'm constantly thinking negative thoughts and harboring unprocessed negative emotions? The nocebo is equal, and I think that's mentioned here as well, equally as powerful. Whatever negating impact you can conjure with your mind is equally as potent as a placebo. What if my body is designed to make my actions align with my beliefs? Does this explain how hypochondriacs who believe they will fall victim to disease can experience measurable symptoms? What if I believe that the symptoms I'm suffering from are, quote, incurable? Can I actually prevent myself from completing the healing process? Can I only truly be healthy when my mind allows it? And it is a supremely worthy and daunting challenge to restructure the mind that way. Bruce Lipton's The Biology of Belief. Can I courageously and consciously every day choose healing, and that my body is self healing, is self regenerating? That if I allow it mentally, consciously, that my body will care for me, and that it will recruit all of the necessary energy, resources, nutrifaction to heal itself, and that I don't need something synthetic and also highly anti-life, possibly deadly, to make that happen. Uh, the mind can be the crucible to make that happen. By what mechanism does a thought generate a material result? For example, how does the mere observation of a stressful event cause my body to produce a stress hormone? Where do the electrical fields generated by my body fit into this equation? This is alignment. This is energetics. This is hydration as well to make sure that your electrical field is stable enough to um, send energy wherever it needs to go. What does the constant bombardment of non-native electromagnetic fields do to my body's natural electrical balance? How does my body react to a full day immersed in, for example, a Wi-Fi network? Can these disharmonious frequencies disrupt my natural processes? Can this be a cofactor in the creation of disease symptoms? I would say yes. And just as another smattering of advice here, as best you can, if you live on your own, if you have control over it, turn your internet off at night. There's no reason you're not using it anyway. Certainly, before it's great when you can do it an hour before bed and really let your body do its best to recalibrate. Turn it off while you're sleeping. Given the complex electrical nature of all living organisms and the evidence that frequency based communication occurs between cells within my body, might immaterial communication between multiple bodies be possible? Could frequencies coming into harmony with one another explain the phenomenon of menstrual cycles syncing? Shouldn't I expect that many other things are being energetically communicated between living organisms as well? This is infectious laughter. This is, do you like someone else's vibe? Can you tell when someone else is angry, upset, or when they're going to do something for better or worse? Yes, that's intuition, but that is there's an electrical registration of that as well. As long as you're fairly intuitive and you don't have a lot of baggage, a lot of layers that would keep you from receiving that. And I think when I look around now and how I sort of meet people where they're at, I'm seeing there's a lot of there's a thick layer of stuff sometimes between me and them, unfortunately. And for people I find easy to connect with, I'm immensely grateful for that. If my body eliminates wastes as part of its solution to an underlying problem, and this process resembles a cold or flu, just names, just words, is it possible that I am capable of energetically communicating this helpful strategy with other people? When they too begin presenting the same detoxification symptoms, wouldn't this appear exactly the same as what we currently call an infectious disease? Is, quote, contagion actually just an intelligent communication process leading to mass healing? I think for every story there is where people say, I was with so and so and they were sick and then we got sick. Uh, I mean, I've had it lately. I mean, especially now that I see through the deception and the misguided belief that I held around contagion. If someone else around me is expressing any sort of symptom, I say, "Come, give me a hug. Give me a kiss." Um, if my body feels like that's a communication it needs to receive, that it's some sort of detox or drainage that I need to go through, it will. Otherwise, it won't. And it's not because of anything I've caught from you or that I have and am possessed by. It's just the is the message decoded by me because it is on the same wavelength. Because not all people are in need of an internal cleanse at the same time, does this explain why syncing frequencies wouldn't necessarily result in spreading the symptoms of disease? Wouldn't this appear exactly the same as our current concepts of, quote, immunity? Because there are relatively few ways for my body to eliminate wastes. Can the differences in severity between various respiratory ailments, referred to as colds, flus, bronchitis, pneumonia, etc., be explained simply by differences in the amount of waste needing to be removed and how capable I am at completing this process without complication? Given that virologists have never been able to find supposedly infectious virus particles in fluids taken directly from an ill person, only showing debris of an unknown origin claimed to be viruses at the end stages of a laboratory process involving multiple inputs, including toxic substances, is it possible that our current concept of a virus is just a story we never outgrew, originating from an inability to explain the phenomenon of contagion? This is the unraveling of the germ theory, and which has been thankfully readily discarded by people whose circle I'm tuned into. And there are references, so it's worth going to. I want to make sure, yes, the last several pages. Yep. Last several pages of this PDF document do have, because we are nearing the home stretch here, people. So bear with me. Um, at least I thought so. Yeah. So this really is, if you haven't heard me speak about this before, or if this is news to you, no virus as it's described in the story, in the narrative that it's presented to us, that it's particle and it floats around in the air when people are breathing and coughing and sneezing, whatever. And that's why you need a mask and stand 6 feet apart and all that malarkey. Uh, it's never been proven in a truly scientific way. There's claims and there's stories and there's rigmarole and there's qualification, and none of it is either in isolation, which, so I mean, one of the great examples given by Dr. Tom Cowan, who's in league with these folks here that I'm curating content for you all from. Uh, one of his great examples is if I said, if I gave you a toolbox and I said, "Can you isolate for me the hammer out of there?" What would you do? You would take out the hammer and hold it in your hand, and also you wouldn't say, "My hand is part of the hammer." No, you put it down. Isolate it as best you can. Make sure that it is a part removed from the whole. What virology does is whatever they think that they're extracting from the fluids of a sick person, or they just take the fluids of a sick person. Um, they say, this thing in the muck in the soup is the virus, and it's usually there's usually, as is mentioned here, a host of other things that they are putting in a petri dish or in a cell culture to stultify this idea of a virus. And a lot of them are synthetic, or it's fetal bovine serum, or it's stem cells, or it's acids, or whatever. And this soup is then what they call a virus. So incredibly deceptive and totally uh, foreign to the idea of a scientific method. And yet, this is what the germ theory of disease is rooted in. Given the various experiments from the early 1900s which failed to spread supposedly contagious diseases from one person to another, what if the simple answer to these failures is that they were working with the wrong foundational hypothesis? And because these studies failed at proving their hypothesis, shouldn't alternative hypotheses have been thoroughly investigated over the last 100 years? Spoiler alert, they have not been until now, which we're super grateful to the true pioneers who are doing it now. And like I said, there's references to this. There's a great, I actually think I have it here. I don't know if I'll bring it up for you at this moment. Just a quick diversion for my own benefit to see if this is something I can share. A list of failed contagion studies, new medicine. Oh, come on. I definitely have this here. Yes, a list of failed contagion studies. How many are there? So this is a 10-page PDF, really easy to go through, that does take you through the list of failed contagion studies. Where again, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, 2 episodes ago, on personal accountability is necessary, episode 72, I believe, or 71. Anyway, from the psychic roots of disease, where they had in Boston during the Spanish quote flu, uh, test subjects, people coughing in their mouths, or they had getting their noses swabbed with the mucus of other people, and nobody got sick. And that's failed contagion for you for sure. So as we continue down the home stretch here, what if many doctors and scientists over the last century actually have done this work? See the resources page, because they fucking have, recognizing the logical errors at the foundation of modern medicine. What if, to the detriment of their careers, they've written many books and papers explaining how humanity has been misled? Would I have heard about these people if my only source of health information came from school textbooks and advertiser funded news? And even if I had heard of them, would I have dismissed them as quacks because their ideas strayed from the norm? That is the social engineering machine. That is the product of the social engineering machine that we have. That if someone is just a little bit outside of the norm, I mean, what's so great about being normal anyway? Then they're quacks and they're misinformation specialists and they're trying to kill you. What if the foundational principles of modern medicine have already been proven wrong? Given the trillions of dollars wrapped up in pharmaceuticals, hospital systems, medical research, and insurance conglomerates, I will also say medical schools, would this knowledge be suppressed? Is the entire paradigm too big to fail? Do the economic implications become so overwhelming that many are afraid to even entertain the notion of changing course? These are largely rhetorical questions in the end. What if well intentioned professionals in various fields of healthcare asked themselves all of these questions? What if they concluded that their careers were based on a series of incorrect assumptions presented as indisputable facts during their formal education and training? Could they overcome this crisis of identity, coupled with the guilt from unwittingly leading patients in the wrong direction for years or decades? Could they brave the financial ramifications of no longer practicing within the same broken system? Quick anecdote on the chiropractic world. The first witch hunt against chiropractors began with the um, what's the word I'm looking for? Loophole sort of, but it's just it's just a game that if you don't participate in, if you say I'm not playing Monopoly, how are you going to hold me accountable to the rules of Monopoly? Uh, they used to hang not literally hang, but they used to nab chiropractors under the legalese of practicing medicine without a license. And the retort from chiropractors was, "We're not practicing medicine. We're not doing surgery. We're not prescribing medications. We're not doing anything that you all do. Basically, we're doing something else. We're helping people get out of the way of or limit the blockages in their body. We're helping people return to real homeostasis. Therefore, we're not practicing medicine." Doesn't always save them from reprisals from the legal system and the medical, pharmaceutical, industrial complex. But these are those are the fail safes that they have. So yeah, I mean that's on the legal front, on the statute front. It's not lawful. It's not real law because the people doing real damage are, you know, like this guy in the background of this image. And I've said before, I have doctors in my family. I come from a tradition of medical professionals. I'm in the greater Boston area. I'm surrounded by people who have who are prostrate before the gods of the white coats and the Beth Israels and the Harvard and the MIT and the Dana Farber, and it's all fucking here. I'm in it, and I'm the fucking heretic because I share stuff like this because I say you can fucking cough and sneeze. I'm not scared of you. I'm fear is the real contagion, and that's a cliche and it's true that being afraid of what someone else might give to you, do to you, that is my immune system, equipped enough to handle it. That's all foobar fugazi bullshit that disempowers you, that does leave you vulnerable to feeling poorly and being out of ease, being diseased. But it's not legitimate. It's not based in reality. And I will qualify that by saying I'm not denying your experience of being sick. The person who listens to this while they had the sniffles and they threw up last night, I'm not denying your experience of being sick. What I'm denying is that you caught it from anybody or that there's some invisible thing that you need to be afraid of. I reject that emphatically. And so what this what this is offering is that we can see why, you know, it's not that everybody has to be in on the deception. It's not, well, they're all lying to you. It's that people are, we know, I remember the kids who were brilliant and thoughtful and caring and open-hearted enough to say, I would like to go be at the front lines of healing people as a doctor. And sure, some people say there's the big payday. I think people know nowadays that they're really in for a rough ride, whether it's medical school and then um, again, I mean, and yet it's such a weird thing that people think I'm going to burden myself with obscene debt and then have to work my life away in an extremely stressful environment to relieve the stress I have of this financial burden to then go have this lifestyle where I have a bunch of cars and I have a big house that I also have to pay for and be stressed about, and then a family that I never get to see because I'm always working and doing surgeries, and I have this great job and everyone tells me I'm so important, everyone tells me I'm so great, and I think I'm so great because I'm on the, I'm holding up the pillars of society where, we cured polio with vaccines, and I'm exhausting I'm looking at this apple that I desperately need to eat. The real medicine right next. I'm taking a bite of this. Thank you. Mm, mm, mm. Look at that. Mm. That's real life right there. That's real medicine right there. So I'm not going to totally defame and denounce doctors. Thankfully, because I have the example of people like Dr. Tom Cowan, man of Ulmer, even people who, I mean, again, from homeopathic colleges that are basically just, or naturopaths who are basically just practicing allopathic medicine under the guise of allopathy or homeopathy. Uh, so it's brilliant people, well intentioned, good hearted people who have been so intensely deceived by this multi trillion dollar. It's supposed to be flattering that I take it as highly flattering that this multi trillion dollar apparatus machine is hell bent, is dedicated to the sole purpose of disconnecting me from nature and my intuition and the wisdom of my heart and my body. That's a worthy opponent. That's so much, so many resources, financial, psychological, emotional, cultural, social, uh, goes into making people like me feel that I'm the crazy one. And I still grapple with it. Things come up where I'm like, fuck. I mean, do I have this wrong? Did so and so really just catch a cold? And so whatever what ifs you have, today we are talking about germ theory versus terrain philosophy, terrain paradigm. We're not talking about cancer. We're not talking about some of the more deadly diseases, which, I mean, to me, they still align more with the psychic roots of disease and things that are not purely harmonic, purely physical, things that are only about the material reality. Uh, just to put a lid on the doctor conversation, it's brilliant people that I have seen cross the picket line, so to speak, that they have joined the ranks of people who are practicing intuitive, heart-led, timeless wisdom and truth, the good, the true, and the beautiful ways of healing, and are leading the charge of people who inspire me day in and day out. And I mention them frequently on this podcast, and I'll be connecting them, connecting you all to them because they really are true leaders. It's not a leader to go to Brown Medical School or Cal or Harvard or wherever and just do what everyone's been doing for 100 years, but only for 100 years. It's only in the wake of the Flexner report and what the Rockefellers did to the to shutter all of the schools of homeopathy, natural medicine, chiropractics, and only make you a legitimate doctor if you say, well, I went to UMass Medical School, or I went to MIT, and I went to Cambridge, Oxford, whatever. That's a game that people don't really have to play anymore because you can find someone who's just absolutely well edified because of their own genuine intellectual curiosity, who has a higher degree of true knowledge, gnosis of health, who has, yeah, a greater degree than someone who got their piled higher and deeper progressive head death PhD, is what that acronym stands for. So, my one of my prayers is that we just get more people from the healthcare professions who take the leap of faith, and it is a leap of faith. Just to go back to this, could someone like that overcome the crisis of identity and all of the choices and hours and money that they invested in their medical career? Can they unravel all that and decouple from the guilt of unwittingly leading patients in the wrong directions for years or decades? Part of it is that is the denial, is who am I if I admit that I was harming people, or if I wasn't doing my best, or if I was, you know, just another, I don't want to say victim, but just another member of just someone else who was following the party line and just shelling out whatever was given to me in Rockefeller created textbooks in medical school. And also, I mean, it's becoming more popular now than ever that people know that people who do 4 years medical school, they don't have any nutritional training at all. And it's folly to deny that the the maxim from ages gone by, I believe from Hippocrates, that let food be thine medicine. And if you can't start with that, then you really have no business just mixing and matching a pharmacological substitute for a food that would do the same bloody thing. So I still have lots of empathy for the doctors, for people who do have high intelligence, who are railroaded and who are incentivized to stay in the confines of their narrow frame of experience. All right, the real home stretch here with a more positive outlook, I believe. So, what if people everywhere in unison began to recognize that our bodies are brilliant, that we are in control of our own health and are not reliant on man-made inventions to quote fix supposed shortcomings of nature? Instead, what if we looked at what we ate and drank and how we talked, thought, and felt? What if we demanded that every dollar currently allocated to disease treatments was instead spent on cleaning our air, soil, and water? What if we focus on removing any impediments standing in the way of how nature intended for our bodies to work? We just went through a selection season in November. People say vote with your dollar. Some level of fasting the system, starving the beast to say, I think that is a worthwhile demand to say, instead of cancer research, which is just investing in more drugs, or yeah, instead of we need more funding to come up with more drugs or more technology. What if the money went to clean air, soil, and water? What if we were no longer afraid of symptomatic people and instead literally embraced them? What if the only quote bug we can spread is a communication strategy intended to resolve an underlying issue? What if we said thank you when we began experiencing the symptoms of disease, recognizing them instead as signs of healing? That really is a great tack to take when you do go through any sort of drainage or symptomatic healing phase, is just to say, thank you, body. I recognize that you are doing this to heal me, and I trust this is my prayer. My body is self healing, self regenerating. Say that until you believe it and know it deep within your core. What if my body is brilliant and yours is too? What would the world look like if we all realized this together? Shout out to James W. See where this. So if you go to the PDF, you can reach out to James W. and thank him for the absolutely peerless and extraordinary achievement of putting this all together. So, I mean, I would say succinctly, if it was on 2 pages, I'd be surprised. But with the illustrations, uh, he finishes with the questions in this book are by no means new, but have increasingly been brought into the public consciousness by a variety of courageous scientists, doctors, and researchers, many of whom are listed in the following pages. So the references, you can have a whole college education just in the references section of this PDF. For instance, What Really Makes You Ill? Why Everything You Thought You Knew About Disease is Wrong by Don Lesser and David Parker. Anyone with an appetite for this stuff, I highly recommend it. It should be required reading in medical school. It won't be. Uh, but they break it down. I mean, they go through all of the sacred cows and fucking slaughter them as they should. A couple downloads here. The Story of a Great Delusion in a series of matter-of-fact chapters is a download. Béchamp or Pasteur, a lost chapter in the history of biology, is available for download. And then the rest, these are recommended books to read. Invisible Rainbow, A History of Electricity and Life by Arthur Furstenberg. I've talked about that before. The Contagion Myth is a must-read. Why Viruses, Including Coronaviruses, Are Not the Cause of Disease by Thomas S. Cowan, Sally Fallon Morell. A couple podcasts on there, which mine will soon be included too, but Terrain Theory podcast on the way forward for sure. Alpha Vedic, where I get a lot of my, where I've certainly had a high level of education from these people and more. But so this is an invaluable resource to you all, and they've made it free. It's in the show notes for you to access for your own benefit and your own personal growth. Um, I, for one, am kind of winded from just going through all of that. I'm glad the sun is still shining and my apple is still here for me. Mm. Also, don't be afraid of apple seeds. Mm. B12 helps with the oxidation factor of your cells. All that science stuff that you don't need to know, because if you just eat the seeds, you'll feel good. Brilliance, wisdom, it's all there. And whatever path leads you there to know it, uh, like I said, or I've said before, you can sort of mantrify yourself into a belief. You can know it on an intellectual level or an intuitive level, whatever way leads you there. Just get there. And the journey is worthwhile. And the longest journey we'll ever take is from our head to our heart, and maybe a foot, but it is long. It is full of so many adventures, and yet it is the most worthwhile. And the heart, as an intuitive sensory organ, will reveal to you the truth of a lot of what was shared and posited in this presentation today. And there's so many myriad offshoots to explore just from some of those questions. Again, you can turn them within and just say, okay, what do I know? What might I know from these experiences? And then look without. The people who have led or misled me, who can I believe? Who do I trust? What feels right to me when I eat this food, when I go through this experience, this trauma, this healing phase? What really resonates with me? Uh, it's only you. Only you have the responsibility. Only you have the ability to respond to the information I provided, to whatever is thrown at you next tomorrow that you didn't see coming, because maybe it came from behind you, maybe it did come from your past, and that's a lot of what's at the psychic roots of disease. Is have you resolved things that happened to you before? Uh, are you brave enough to do that alone? When do you ask for help? And help is not asking someone to do it for you, not asking someone to take the cup from you, uh, to shoulder the burden instead of you. But maybe it's just help. Maybe it's just, hey, can you tell me if you have walked a similar path? Can you show me what you did? There will always be a nuanced and a unique way that you have to go through it. And the people I follow, the Dr. Bear Landos, Dr. Tom Cowan, Kelly Brogan, Andy Kaufman, to name a few, and their resources will be shared for sure at a later date. And I circulate them all the time, but they encourage the self-empowering, and they ask the questions and do provide protocols because they're bona fide professionals. Where my role is at the moment, as I see it, is just to in asking who's to say, in echoing a lot of what I've gone through, and what really ignites my fire of genuine curiosity. I think it's easy to pass that flame, as long as you're not damp or numb or not in my same field. So it's all right if you're not. We'll find each other in the end. We're all just walking each other home. And in the meantime, I encourage you, I beseech you, I implore you to get curious about what's going on within you. That is the real true experience first, that is deserving of your attention and intention, and collecting as much energy as you can for you, because you are the hero and the heroine in your journey, and you got to be strong and hard to kill. And that's what this is all about, is not thinking that something is going to enter you or come to get you and lay you low, and that you can't handle it. You absolutely can. You have everything you need. It's just about unlocking those treasures. So some sunlight today, getting your bare feet on the ground, drinking great water, moving your body, exploring what you're physically capable of, and then however you engage with your emotions and your thoughts. That's where the real magic is, and you are a magician, an alchemist. And if I had a prayer for today, it's that some nugget from this presentation you can store in your treasure chest for another day, or you can play with it now. and see what kind of fun you have there. But I'm signing off to go get some sunshine myself. And until next time, it's always a pleasure and a privilege to share with you, uh, like I said, these things that light me up and make me smile and make me feel powerful and connected to the good, the true, and the beautiful. And share more soon for sure.